right, good morning, Rabbi Isai. One more time. It's one of those days. Bear with me. I hope I could hold it together today, or at least for the beginning. Today's shir is being sponsored leilui nishmat and by Dr. Marc Berkson. He's honoring his wife's birthday, Varda Penina's birthday. We have also Uncle Phil sponsoring his wife's birthday. I spoke to Dr. Berkson this week. I didn't know that he's sponsoring. I called him up, and he told me how the Daf has changed his life. It's changed his family's life, his wife, everything. His kids see him learning every day. It's amazing. And he told me that he takes things from the Daf and applies them to his life. He's another person that wears a hat during Kiddush. One day he shows up to Kiddush with a hat. His wife, what are you doing? He said, I learned it in the Daf, and it stuck. So beautiful. Unfortunately, I have some bad news. I did a little crying on this last night, this morning. Hope I could say it without falling apart. Today's shir is sponsored by the MDY family, leilui nishmat Yerachmiel ben Yisroel. Yerachmiel, we daven for. He's that 8-year-old kid that had a brain tumor. I knew I shouldn't have done this. All right. I spoke to his father yesterday. His levaya was just yesterday. I spoke to the father during Shiva yesterday, and he told me the first thing that came out of his mouth, he said he wanted to thank the Olam. He said, you don't understand the chizuk that the Olam has given him. People have sent him gifts. And one of the things that somebody just sent me yesterday, I cried all over again from seeing this. Here's a note written. I heard on the Rebelli shir, you listen to the shir, he's talking to the kid that's unconscious. You listen to the shir with your father. Please open on the day of the siyum. And he sent him stuff. Anyways. A whole box of gifts, of toys for the kids in the house. I don't know if you noticed, on Zoom every single day, there's a guy watching and he doesn't show his face. I've never seen his face. It says CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Every single day for the last year. When I was giving shir twice a day, he was on twice a day. So Rabbi Isai, if you have the koyach, call up this guy. His name is Rabbi Yisroel Gordon. I can't give out his phone number on YouTube. 732-668-8790. Pay him a Shiva call. It's unbelievable the amount of chesed. I think 8 shiurim was sponsored, the refuas, this kid, by strangers that never met this person. He also told me an amazing thing. Amazing. At one tkufa, he was stuck in the hospital for 3 weeks. He couldn't leave the hospital, him and his wife, because of COVID. If they would leave, they wouldn't let him back in. Stuck, as a healthy person, stuck in the hospital. Unbelievable. The Neshoma should have an aliyah, and the chabura gave me a lot of chizuk. Just the mishpacha, the way we are. Sponsored by Uncle Phil, in honor of my wife, Aunt Nancy, for the other birthday. He sponsored for the regular Hebrew birthday, and now for the other, and for the Neshoma of Yerachmiel ben Yisroel. They called him Alter, I guess that name doesn't apply anymore. Yerachmiel ben Yisroel, who's just niftar. All right. Do we have any time here? Wow. He asked not to publish this back in the day, but I don't know. This gives a lot of chizuk. I'm going to say it anyways. Hope he's not makbid. He's not going to be listening to this shir anyways. And he doesn't have WhatsApp. He doesn't have internet. He can only watch it through the hospital. And Baruch Hashem, he's no longer. Baruch Hashem, he's not going to have to be in the hospital now. Passover of Eli sits by the shears. The Gemara Shabbos Amud Beis says, "Elo mis'atev v'yoshev lefanav v'bnei shechina l'malamir ashoysev shechoyla v'lo yalga b'imbokim gavoya v'lo l'malamir ashoysev." And the schus to have the shechina at the shear is amazing. Thank you again for learning and saying Tehillim. And out there, Yerachmiel's schus, Baruch Hashem, we are surrounded by great family, many great people. We just need more tefillas. May this be the end of the galus and bring the Mashiach. Please don't publicize this, just for your information, and chizuk to the greatest Maggid Shir worldwide. All right, fine. Enough of this. Now we have to learn Torah b'simcha. Huh? Is it the right time? Okay, we'll have to find it later. Okay, sorry, everybody. I apologize. I was hoping to keep it together. And by the way, it's a tremendous. We have a big schos. We have Yehoshua. I wouldn't have known about this. Yehoshua decided to call him up randomly. He didn't know. Nobody knew about it. He called him. He said, "What's going on?" He says, "I just came back from the Levaya." It's unbelievable. All right. So Rabbi Isai, we're holding Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis on the bottom. Omer Marzutra. 2 lines from the bottom. With the Geschmack. Rabbi Isai. Sorry. Loi limachi inish kidro bekimcha davishuna. You shouldn't try to thicken a dish on Pesach with oven-dried flour. Perhaps you won't be able to cook it well, and you'll come to chametz. What happened there? Because since it's oven-dried, it's not 100% baked. Put it in, take it out. So it has some moisture in there, and we're concerned that moisture will escape. And Rashi explains that typically when you put it in a dish, you're boiling it up in roitchim, it's not a problem. But over here, the concern is you usually don't put it into boiling water. Omer Rav Yosef, Loi lichloit inish trei chiti b'hadei adadi. You shouldn't boil 2 grains, 2 kernels. We're talking about kernels. I brought for something else, but I'm thinking now. This is 2 kernels. I don't even know if you could see. 1 at a time. What's the concern? Even if you zoom, 1 at a time. Because you want the boiling water to get all surfaces of the kernel. It's possible that one will go and lodge itself in the cleft. Here we have a picture. The way it works with wheat, if you look at wheat, puffed wheat for instance, you all recognize this indentation here. So we're concerned that one will go over here and basically lodge itself in there, and the water is not going to reach all 4 corners. And it'll come to chametz. Now when it comes to singeing, it's different than boiling. Says Abaye to begin with, he retracts. He says you shouldn't singe 2 barleys or 2 grains together. As he's singeing it, the moisture will seep out and go into the second one. What are you talking about? What's the difference? Moisture from one going into the other, moisture from itself going into itself. It'll come from the top and go into the bottom. If you're concerned that moisture is going to be swallowed by another one, says Rava, I'm not concerned about liquids at all, because that's called mei peiros, the sweat of fruit. And the sweat of fruit is not machmetz. Umei peiros eina machmitzim. Says the Gemara, Abaye retracted. They call it agav midolayu loy mechamtzi. We're not concerned that when moisture comes out and goes downwards, it's not going to go into another piece, another kernel. So you have a jug that you roast the grains in it. So if it's upright, I don't have another cup, but if it's upright, so what happens is the moisture in the wheat goes to the bottom of the kli, accumulates in the bottom, and will re-enter the grain. But if the kli is upside down, so as you introduce moisture to the kli, it's going to drip outwards, so you're not going to have any moisture accumulating. But you see here that Abaye holds that moisture could penetrate another kernel. A second ago he said moisture doesn't penetrate. The way it comes out, it doesn't penetrate. But over here you see that it could penetrate if the kli is upright. So you see that Abaye retracted. So we have a machloikis here in a situation where the kli is right side up. According to Abaye, I'm concerned about the liquids that come out, and according to Rav, I'm not concerned because that's called mei peiros ninu, mei peiros einon machmitzin. All right. Rabbi, I had I thought I had a cool chiddush yesterday, although my chavrusa doesn't agree with me. But what do you think? Because I was thinking that people were telling me after the shir that people use horseradish and maror. Now there's an amazing. I just need a tissue. Anybody have a tissue here? Shkoyach. No, not everybody at one time. I have unbelievable. Shkoyach. Thank you. Appreciate it. Why? At home, those tissues are right there. It's just tears. That's what it is. My father-in-law taught me that when a person cries, the tears go into. He's a nose doctor. He knows what he's talking about. He knows. Got to get out of that. All right. So Nachum, we were talking about yesterday, maror, the different types of maror, and why do Hasidim eat horseradish today when the Mishnah says you should eat, it seems like from the Mishnah you should eat romaine lettuce first. So if you were to eat half and half, what happens? So the Mishnah says if you eat two types of maror, you're yaitza. But it's more than that. There's an amazing Mishnah Masechet Chala that says that if you take a half a kazais of wheat and make a matzah out of it, and the other half you take rice, and rice we said you're not yaitza matzah, this particular matzah you're yaitza. It's mitzdarif to allow you to be yaitza, you ate a wheat matzah. As long as that you could taste the wheat. So I wanted to say that perhaps if you're eating a little bit of horseradish and a little bit of romaine, it's as if you ate romaine, according to that Mishnah. Because if you ate a half of rice, which is nothing, and it adds that you could add it to the half of to wheat, and it's considered you ate a wheat matzah, so Mela, you ate romaine, you ate a whole kazayz of romaine, you mamish yaitz the Mishnah, plus you yaitz your minhag, and you're great. Says the Gemara, he didn't like it.
And you got bitterness.
Yeah, you got bitter, you got everything. Well, bitterness is not so important, the Gemara said. Fine. I'm hung up on that whole thing.
I roll the same thing. You know that, right?
Why? He said the chasa you do have.
You hold this not.
Those similarities.
Those similarities.
No, because rice you can't use it's not whole wheat. The lettuce is more of it. The whole give you making.
Adarabba, it's better. It's better. I'm saying it's better. It's better. It's not.
They don't do it at all because it's not the minimum, so it doesn't matter.
They do. They eat both. A lot of people told me.
They don't eat lettuce.
No, a lot of people told me they do both.
They do not eat lettuce. They eat more.
They told me they eat both. A lot of people on Zoom yesterday that looked very Hasidish to me. You're not Hasidish. Nachman Seltzer said you're not Hasidish. Shalom Yisroel. Finish. End of story.
The Heimish maybe.
Tanabanon ein loises in soirim bePesach. You should not soak, even in cold water, barley on Pesach. V'im losas nizbaku asuros. If they split open, it's also that's a siman that is full of chametz. Lo nizbaku mutares. It didn't leaven yet. It didn't split, so it's okay. Rabbi Yossi Omer, shorin b'chaymetz tzoimson. You soak it in. I have a trick, he says. If it's about to explode, what you do is you take some vinegar and you soak it in the vinegar, and the vinegar will reduce the swelling. Now, does anybody know why the badats, the Eder Charedis, the real badats, you know, like when we moved to Yisroel, my wife is buying these things. I said badats. She's like, yeah, it says badats machpad. Badats this. There's one badat. Badat's Eder Charedis, right? Why they never gave a hechsher to vinegar on Pesach for all the years? Because it says on it chametz. It's called chametz in Hebrew. So now they gave in, even though it's 100% not chametz because it's synthetic, but it's called chametz. Anyway, I was just as a point. So if you soak it in vinegar, the Tanaim gave a hechsher to it, so it's okay. Omer Shmuel, ein halacha k'Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is not like that. It doesn't reduce the swelling. Omer Rav Chizda Omer Mar Ukva. Lo nizbaku mamish. We have machlekes. Did it explode? Didn't explode? Elo kol sheilu menicham al pei chaves. It didn't really completely split. It's to the point that if you put it on a barrel of wine and the vapors of the wine are so strong, they will cause it to explode. That's enough. Ushmul aman is baku mamish. And Shmuel says, oy vavoy, I just realized with all the crying, I forgot to print out the halachas negiyah. I have to see if I can remember it Baal Peh. I didn't even write it down. I wrote it down at home and I didn't put it in the thing. All right, because Boruch Nosson should help. I should remember a little bit. Shmuel Aman is baku mamish. We're talking about that it has to explode, and if it doesn't explode, it's not chametz. Says the Gemara, Avat Shmuel uvda beduro debei bar chashu nizbaku mamish. There was a Maisa Shaya. They came to him and they showed him the barley. What did they show him? They showed him something that didn't explode, and he said, that's okay. That's not considered chametz, because I hold it has to explode in order for it to be chametz. And since it didn't reach that level yet, you could use it. Omer Abba, Baal Nefesh. What's a Baal Nefesh, says Rashi? A Chassid, a Yirei Shamayim. Both. Lo Yiltois. He shouldn't soak. My year, Baal Nefesh, Afilu Kuli Almanami. Anybody. We learned just now in the Brisa, Ein Loisin Sorim Pesach. He shouldn't soak barley. Hachi Kamar. Baal Nefesh, somebody who's a Chassid, Afilu Chitin the Shriri, even another variety called wheat, not only barley, but even wheat, because wheat is a lot tougher and the water has a harder time to penetrate and make it chametz, lo yiltois. He shouldn't soak it. Omer Rav Nachman, I don't believe in what you're saying. Man detzayis leila Abba, whoever listens to Rabba, who just said this, Abba is Rabba. Ochel nahamo di pusha. Why do you soak the bran? Why do you soak the grain? You soak it a little bit so that you could give it a good pounding and you remove the chaff, the whatever is around it. So Memela, don't listen to him, because if you don't remove it, you're going to have the bran and everything baked in your bed. It's bread. It's terrible stuff. Whole wheat. Look, everybody's, the Goyers, a different name here, but everybody is soaking it. Virava Omar, we're going to have very, very interesting. We're starting off with Rava, who says, basically, he had 3 stages in his life, Rava. He starts out saying that you're usher to soak. Later on in his life, he said it's mutter to soak. So what's the 3rd stage? It's a mitzvah to soak. He went from usher to a mitzvah. Pasha a mitzvah to take before you make matzah, soak it in water, make sure it's all soaked. So he starts off saying, V'rava Amar Osa Liltais. You're not allowed to soak. Elo Adesanya Ein Loisis in Sorim Pesach, but Ein Loisis in Sorim Pesach. Sorim Hudaloi Hochiti Shari. It seems like only barley, but as we said before, wheat is a lot tougher, so you're permitted. Loi mebayi kamer, no. Loi mebayi chid in the kivin this beit tzira. Ailu bumayo abul sorry. Look at this. So I'm not exactly like, I have the pieces over here. I actually had wheat. It's the first time in my life I did a disha, whatever. I took out a kernel from the wheat that I brought the other day. I don't know if you remember, I brought the whole thing. And as you see in this picture, wheat has this line. And this is barley. Barley has a visible line, but it's not indented. It's smoother. That's what the Gemara says. So because it's indented, water gets in there. And it's easier for the water to penetrate and make it chametz. Don't worry, tomorrow Avi Mandelbaum will send me a video exactly how it works. But that line, it's probably more of it's not sealed as well as the barley. So kivin is beitzira ailibu mayo. The water will get in there. Avasari this shie, it's smooth. Emo shaper dami. I would think you could soak it in water. Kamashmal, you shouldn't even soak barley. So it's both in that you can't soak. Says the Gemara Hadam Arava mutter lutos. Stage number 2. I used to say it's usher. Now I say it's mutter to soak. The sanya, I'll tell you why. Yoitzim pas nekiyah vadro. We learned this. That you could be yoitza with matzah from Shloim HaMelech. We even learned, right? The finest flour. How do you get fine flour? How do you get fine? You have to be able to pound it. How do you pound it? You have to soak it first, and then give it a good pounding, and then whatever, all the junk comes off. But you have to soak it. So since it says that I could be yoitza with pas nekiyah, vadra is the coarse one. V'yev shenekiyah b'loy l'sisa. You have to soak it. It says hakmochim b'al soltois shel nachrim. Here, soilas. Soilas means fine flour of goyim. Remember what I said? Again, this is something my chavrusa argues with me. I got to ask Reb Chaim Kanievsky, or somebody that really, really knows Shas inside out. I taina that one of the most popular topics in Shas is hechsher l'kabel tumah. So here it is again. I don't want to say it every single time. It's like mamish every daf. So, shel kfarim tahirim. If you're buying flour from a non-Jew, From the villages, it's tar. Because in the villages, they don't care so much about the cleanliness, so they're not going to soak it in water to remove all the shmutz. So if they don't soak it in water, then the flour is not mekabel tumah. In order for something to be mekabel tumah, you have to be machshir lekabel tumah. You have to put one of the 7 liquids. So from the fact that I'm telling you that it's tahar, it's not mekabel tumah, it tells me that there's no water introduced there. But yet it calls it slatais. Hakmachim v'haslasai shel nachrim. The fine flour. How did I get the fine flour without water? So you see that your raya rava, that you said that you can use clean bread and you need water. No, here it says mafurish. Here's fine flour that no water was ever introduced to it. The kfar my time because they didn't introduce water. And it's still called fine flour. It says it says hakmachim aslasais. Take out the slasais, put that in the back. The kmachim is nachrim, and later on it says shel kfarim, shel krachim. The city folks, they're more makbid on cleanliness, so they have the fine flour and the regular flour. The silas goes with the city. Okay, that's what he's going to have to be daichik. Basa denofik Omar, it happens all the time. Rav Papa, he couldn't believe it. I just left Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I can't believe it. He had a great... Rava just left and it's too late. You can't ask him the shayla. Mamashat Tsar, says Rashi. Omar, my time I should have asked him from the pasuk. Forget about Brisa. The Omar Reb Zera Omar Rav, Omar Reb Yirmiyah Shmuel, Chitim shal menachos, the wheat of a mincha. Hey, loisin oisam. You should not soak them in water. Vikakarilu silas. When you bring a mincha to the Beis Hamikdash, do not soak it in water. And what's a mincha made out of? Soilus, fine flour, all the time. The entire mincha is talking about soilus. Soilus mincha belula b'shemen, right? The whole, it's in the pasuk. Hadamarava, listen to this, stage number 3. Mitzvah lil tois. You should put it in water, lechatchila, soak it in water. Shenemar ushmartem es hamatzos. So every daf has a little bit of a tricky sugya to it. By the way, now that I'm not crying anymore, here's a picture of a beautiful kid, Yerachmiel, together with Mamliel. This is what he looked like, if anybody wants to see. Such a little sweet kid. And here he is, the Tehillim, Yisroel, Chaim Kanievsky, all the Tehillim, Gershon. Okay. Says the Gemara. Let's see if I can find it here. Say about peh, real quickly. It's not that difficult. It's just in the wording here. There are 3 stages. Let's call it 3 stages. When you harvest the wheat, and this is purposely a non-Jew, and when you knead the dough, this is a non-Jew, and when you put it in the oven, let's call it. Okay, so 3 stages. Rav is of the opinion, says in the pasuk ushmartem, we spoke about matzah shmura, lishma. You should be careful not to introduce chametz to this. Now, from the point that you put water into it, I don't need a pasuk to tell me, be careful, it shouldn't be chametz. The Torah says you can't eat chametz on Pesach, the following pasuk says. So what does ushmarta mean? You should be careful, it shouldn't be chametz. Says Rava l'chayra, it means from beginning to end. I have to be careful, it's a mitzvah to lishma, l'shem matzah, but also in that lishma, be careful that it shouldn't be chametz. From when? From beginning to end. But where's water? Before lisha, before I need the dough, where's the water? L'chayra means that you should introduce water, but there's l'sisa, you're soaking it beforehand. At that point, from that point. Perhaps the Torah said you should only do shmira at one point, anywhere in here. One of the many avodas you do with bread. And you yai to the mitzvah. If that's the case, Rav has a beautiful proof. Then you should be able to eat matzah on Pesach that you bought the dough, ready-made dough from a guy. You hear, Nachman? Matzah that you bought ready-made from a guy, should be able to eat it Leila Seder. Now you're able to eat it on Leila Seder, but not Yaitz the mitzvah. Why aren't you Yaitz the mitzvah? Because you're missing a little bit of Lishma here. But where did you buy the matzah? Think about it. You bought the matzah from a guy right at this stage. He finished kneading it. You go, you buy the dough. You're able to bake something from it and eat it at Leila Seder, but not matzah. Why? Because you didn't do Lishma. But why not, says Rava. I just threw it into the oven, Lishma. The Torah says, do one Lishma. One Lishma. So you know what my Lishma is? I put it in a pan, I smeared it, everything. I was thinking to myself, now I'm making sure it's not chametz, only 18 minutes, whatever, the whole thing, and I put it into the oven. That's not good enough. It's a raya that you need lishma from A to Z, not just Z. That's his raya. And since you need lishma from A to Z, where's the lishma before step 2? Must be that step 1 is l'sisa. It's, you hear, it's a little bit of a chap here. You chap? Right, so I stuck that in. There's a lishma of shimur. It's making sure that it doesn't become chametz l'shem matzah. That's how I'm learning it. Like he starts off the sugya with shimur, and he moves into lishma, and kind of goes back. Let's see it inside. Maybe it'll be more understood. I'll prove to you that it's a mitzvah actually to soak in water. You have to do lishma, you have to make sure, well, at this point, for this second, make sure no chametz goes in. Forget about lishma. But if you don't need to soak it in water, shimur lamai, what are you watching for? From the point of needing on, of course you can't have chametz. You don't need a pasuk to say, oh, by the way, be very careful, it shouldn't be chametz. You don't need chametz on Pesach. So what's this extra mitzvah of shimur, of watching? Shimur delisha lav shimuru. That's not enough, says Rava. Why is that not enough? You hear this? Dough that you bought from a guy, you could eat. Well, the Rishonim Mechulik, if mamish means that, some Rishonim say the Jew was there the entire time. There's mamish no chiddush in this at all. According to others, it means that no, you bought it off in the store, ready-made dough. Big chiddush. Why can't you eat it at Leil HaSeder for matzah? Because you didn't do it l'shma. Now Rava turns to l'shma. It wasn't l'shem matzah. B'achroina at the end of the Seder, you need matzah l'shma b'rishoina loy. My time mishum deli ovad b'ushimur. You can't use it in the beginning because you didn't do shimur. Now you have to see Rashi here, very, very important Rashi. This is mamish negeh l'maisa. At Leil HaSeder, how many of you knew that the main mitzvah's matzah is not when we say the bracha al achilas matzah when we eat a kazayis? The main mitzvah matzah is when? At the end of the Seder, when we eat afikoymen. Says Rashi, 3 lines down from the wide lines, bachroino, he mitzvah achilasa. That is the mitzvah. At the end of the Seder. Shema Pesach, with the korban Pesach, he chayvas achilasa. That's the chayva. D'chsiv, kro, al matzah sim roim yichlu, u Pesach nachal al soiva. And korban Pesach is eaten when you're full. It's not, you're not allowed to eat afikoymen when you can't eat dessert, that is, after afikoymen. Okay, so here's halacha l'maisa. I don't know, I didn't look it up really, but let's say you only have one kazayis, where should you eat it? I think it's a nida, and I forgot to look it up. But it comes out that the main focus of matzah, even though we start in the beginning, that's the Seder, you eat in the beginning of the Suda, but the main part of matzah is when you're full and you can't get that, you do it b'di'evet as it barely goes in. That's the main mitzvah. Says the Gemara, my timer, why can't you use that as a matzah, the goyish dough, because there's no lishma? What's the problem? The Torah tells you a mitzvah of shimur, do it right here, at the end, when you put it into the oven. Says Rava, therefore I prove from here, since you can't do it at the end, that means you need the lishma from the top, from the beginning. And the goyish dough, it doesn't have shimur from the beginning. Sorry. Says the Gemara, no, I'm going to be doichet. Who told you? Maybe shimur is from this point, from when you need it. Before that, there's no shimur at all. From that point on, you have to watch it, and guess what? You didn't watch it. It was by the guy when he needed it. Maybe that's what happens here. Who told Rav you have to go all the way back? Maybe you go to the middle. Kneading is shimur, but you weren't there. That's why you can't eat it for the mitzvah of matzah. You could eat it during the Seder, but since you weren't there, you didn't do l'shma. No. Rava did not retract, even though he doesn't have a solid raya. He told those that flip over the grain. In other words, they're tying the bushels, and they flip it over. He says, even when you're flipping it over, have l'shma. Al Makasavar Shimumi Kara Mitchilosivat Soifer Beinon. End of the story. Now we're turning to Daf Mem Amud Beis, sponsored by Gedalia Fenster. I got an email from both Reb Gedalia and James Saka. Both. Gedalia is the father of Yerachmiel Daniel ben Toiva Basha, who had surgery yesterday in Baruch Hashem. We got word that the surgery was successful, but Yerachmiel has to be in the hospital for 7 weeks. 7. We could start. We complain when we're bidud for 14 days. 7 weeks in the hospital. So, Marc Berkson says the Gemara, Menaktale imei ba'arve, and they are related. So James Saka is the uncle, Gedalia is the father. Menaktale imei ba'arve. So the mother of Marc Berkson would take this wheat, put it in a vessel, and keep it for Pesach. So he had shmura matzah. So let me see if I remember. I know I'm going to miss something. It was 5 halachas. Lechatchila, we should do shimur from the beginning to the end, from tchina, all the way to the end. And if not, you go from lisha. And the Mishnah Berurah says that a Baal Nefesh should be machmir throughout the entire Pesach. Forget about matzahs mitzvah. The entire Pesach should use shmura matzah. And then he steps it down. Not from tchina and then lisha, but it's lisha onwards. And I do have to say a mazel tov to the Chosin Blinder. I forgot to say, what's his first name? Leibi? Lev Avram. So the Blinder Mishpacha, mazel tov to them. Who? Rabbi Yaakov Blinder, Abada. I didn't know about the Chasana before the Chasana. It's COVID, but now it's better later than ever. So mazel tov, you should be zoichet to be Beina Beis, never be Yisroel. Zok the Gemara Maisa. There was a boat full of wheat that sunk. But all the wheat, the whole cargo started floating. What do you do with the floating wheat? He said you could sell to the guy. What's the concern? That it's going to become chametz. It's saturated with water. But you're selling it to a guy. Are you allowed to sell something to a guy that the guy might turn around and sell to a Jew? Well, it depends. If it's noticeable, where do we have recently? A noticeable isser that you're allowed to sell to a guy, because if he sells it back to the Jew will know. Remember anybody? Huh? Chodesh is not noticeable. Shatnez we're going to see in a second. Gid Anasha. We had to Gid Anasha. You could sell the whole yerach to the guy, because if he turns around and sells it back to the Jew will realize. You have a little bit climb in there, but it's lost. You can't differentiate. You don't know where the thread is. You can't sell it to the guy because it's not nicker. Oh, so that's it. That's the kasha. How do you sell chametz to a guy? Kernels that have water in them that the Jew will never realize. So the Rishonim Radan is a big kasha. What do you mean you don't realize? We just said paskin that it has to be exploding and has to split. He could see. If it didn't split, then it's not chametz. If it did split, you could tell. Fine. They go into it. He's working it the whole time. Here's a mardas. There's a saddle cloth. It's the cloth below the saddle. So that also, you should not make it out of klaim. Why? Because you might have a hole in your pants and you want to make a patch. You'll go to your saddle and cut off a little bit of the cloth and use it, and you'll forget that it's shatnez. You make tachrichim for the dead. Why? Because the dead don't have mitzvahs anymore. Ba'mesim Chavshi. What's the lashon over there? Is that the lashon? Ba meisim chavshi. What does Rashi say? Yeah, ba meisim chavshi. The famous Vilna Gaon is sitting on his bed about to be niftar, and he held onto his tzitzis for a few kapichkas. You could buy tzitzis, whatever the word is, in this world. Once a person is dead, he's not released. He doesn't have the ability to be mekayim mitzvahs. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. So, and you can't have anah from the tachrichim. It's also bahana once you give it to the mace. So, no concern. The whole point is that you can't sell to a guy because they'll turn around and sell to a Jew. You're right. You can't sell it as is. Sell a very small amount of it to the Jews because they're going to consume it before Pesach. You could also, the Rishonim are dam. You could sell it to a guy as well because he's going to consume it. He won't turn around and sell to the Jew. Don't add flour to your dishes. You're cooking something, you're not allowed to add flour on Pesach. Chametz, v'haroitzes sheyimlo. What if you do want to add, you need to add, noisen es hakemach, v'achar kach, noisen es hachometz. You can do this. First, you have the flour. Maybe it's on a flame. Then you add the vinegar. You take the hot vinegar. You see, I put a little flamer, even though it's a glass. And then you put if you do it in reverse, then it's not a problem. It's going to, the vinegar will take care of the chametz problem. There won't be chametz. It's going to cook it up real good. Who says that vinegar, even though it's boiling, it's in a pot somewhere, it has the ability to cook up the chametz? It's Rabbi Yehuda. You take a pan off the flame, Erev Shabbos. It's boiling Erev Shabbos. And then goes Shabbos. You shouldn't pour any spices into it. Why? What is that called? What is this pot? Bishul from a Kli Rishon. It just came off the flame and it's boiling. However, if you take this frying pan full of hot boiling water, pour it into another kli, that's called kli sheni, and that doesn't cook halachically the spices, and that's mutter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lakolu noisen, you could put any spices into anything. Besides, if we're dealing with vinegar, vinegar and brine are very powerful. They have the power to cook something up. Oh, so here's the Rabbi Yehuda that says the vinegar could cook up the flour. What about Rabbi Yossi? Asks the Gemara that we had before. He has a trick. He takes some vinegar. You have a swelled up, so you have swollen, about to burst wheat. You introduce some vinegar. It reduces the swelling. So why can't we say like Rabbi Yossi? We're not going to Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara, it reduces the swelling. Rabbi Yossi only said this when the vinegar is right there in front of you. You have vinegar, 1 + 1 equals reduction. But if the vinegar is in the dish already, it's part of the dish, it doesn't have the ability to reduce the swelling. Ula says, forget about it. It doesn't matter this way or this way. The vinegar into the flour into the vinegar. This is a famous line in Shas. When somebody's a Nazir and he can't drink wine, he can't have grapes, you tell him, stay away from trouble. Don't put yourself in a situation of danger of walking through the vineyard. Go around, schar. What are you busy putting yourself in a sakana? Like Karmeloi Tikra, Rabboisai, we're not Nazirim, but we have the same thing applies to us. A person is on a diet, you don't buy a beautiful cake and put it in front of you and say, I'm going to be Mizgaber. Smartphone, Dal Hakim Beremiza, you get a shtickle filter going. You don't put yourself in a matzav of sakana and say, I'm strong, I'm a strong person. Even a Nazir shouldn't walk through the vineyard. Rav Papi Sharle Leburdike, the Beireish Gelusa. Rav Papi allowed the slaves, they were slaves. These are professional bread makers of the Reish Galus, the big mansion. He had people in charge of the bread, but they were slaves nonetheless. And he allowed them lemimche gedera bechasise, to take these oven-dried flour that we were discussing before to thicken up the dish. We're talking about slaves. You're going to trust the slave when it comes to chametz? These are delicate things. It's going to become chametz, not chametz. You're introducing flour into a hot source, and we said before it's oven-dried, so it has moisture inside. It could release, and you think the slave cares? He'll tell his master, yeah, it's not chametz. Says the Gemara, Omar Rava, Iked Armi, Rava Gufa Machila. He himself introduced it and did this. They didn't allow the slaves. Machila Kidra Bechasise. Fine. The official new Mishnah is L'Zeicha Nishmas Yerachmiel ben Yisroel Olav Sholem. It's unbelievable. Official and the fill and this one, that one's. Were you emotional by this as much as me? No, to know that the chevra, I didn't know that every day, they were sending it. And this guy tells me he has older kids, he has 2 married daughters, but the constant thing, it's not like he needed toys. Yeah, but that somebody cared, somebody sent him a note, somebody did this, and they kept on encouraging him throughout the entire time. Unbelievable. Zok the Mishnah. Ein noistim kemach l'toich charoises. We are not dealing with the charoises of Leila Seder. We're dealing with a dip that you dip your meat into. It's called charoises. It has vinegar in it. And that's the problem. The problem is also, the Rishonim discussed that Rashi really means this as well, that there's some water in it. It's a dip. You have to smooth it out. You introduce some water, vinegar, and that could make the flour chametz on Pesach asur. Now, the Mishnah tells us two things, charoises and mustard. The Gemara is going to discuss whether there's a machloikis on both or in just one. The Tanna Kama says, eat it right away. Is he going on both or on just one? Remei says, don't eat it. Do not, you're not allowed to cook. Somebody, a Talmud Chacham, wrote to me, I'm surprised nobody corrected me on the spot. I had a slip in my tongue. I said, Korban Pesach, you should eat when it's raw. I said, no, when I was talking about the word no, eat when it's raw. No, it was a slip through everybody's head. But some Talmud Chacham sent me an email, but ayin in the pasuk, it says, Al toichal no, whatever. Okay, fine. It says, you should not cook it, mivushal, you should not cook it. It has to be roasted. What's the pasuk? I hope it has the pasuk on the side here. Maybe not. Here, atoichlu memenu no. Yes, you shouldn't cook it. Yes, I'm listening. I missed? Oh, I didn't even say the bottom one. Oy vey, mechila from the Neshoma. And Yehoshua ben Boruch Nosson. I missed it, sorry. Leilui nishmat Yehoshua ben Boruch Nosson, all of us shalom, the Neshoma should have an aliyah. Thank you. So do not cook. It says in the pasuk, you're not supposed to cook. I'll tell you about ubosh mevushal b'mayim. You shouldn't cook it in water. So we're discussing now not water, we're talking about mashkim, v'lo b'mei peiros, and not the sweat or the juice of fruit. Avosachin, you could baste it, umadbilin oisoy. So when it's roasting, you baste it, and when you're eating it, you could dip it into juice. The bakers would dip their hands in water, so the water is full of flour, because it becomes chametz. So the two things that we mentioned, mustard and charoises, the whole machlokes, whether if you eat it or you don't eat it, is only regarding mustard. If flour fell into the charoises dip, then you have to burn it immediately, even according to the Tanna Kama. We learned so specifically. You shouldn't. Everybody agrees you burn it. The machlokes is l'toich hachardal and mustard. That's the whole machlokes. Let's just finish this because it's the same thing over. The halacha is like chachamim, that when it comes to mustard, you could eat it. And Rameir says you can't eat it, so the halacha is like chachamim. Acharoises kamar mar, was he talking about one or he's talking about two? Was he talking about both charoises and mustard, the halacha is like chachamim, that you could eat it? Kamar mar? Or yachal kamar mar? Or he's only talking about mustard? As we just said, that the machlokes is only on one. I never heard about that. I hold the machlokes is in both. There's no, as we would read the Mishnah. A noisim kemach charoises or mustard. Charoises and mustard are equal. Chachamim say you could eat it. If you do, you could eat it immediately. Rameir says burn, and that's the halacha. The halacha is like chachamim, that on both you could eat it immediately. Have a wonderful day. The Neshoma should have an aliyah, and Yerachmiel, Daniel, should have a refuah shlema be'karoiv. Shem ha'lois ma'amkim chosicha adinoi. Neshoma of Yerachmiel. Amoi. Imcha slichot lemati borei. Yisa ani gitzel namshid v'repolto. Huh? Cry baby Ben Adam. Have a good day, Leiby. Mazel tov on the Siyum today. Shkoyach. Shkoyach, Rabbi. You guys notice the CHOP every day, no? Huh?
I just want to point out to you that the sponsorship from the Daf members was a collection of different people. I'm not even going to tell you who it was. But there's some reason people who wanted to chip in.
Yeah, but so how did that other neshama get on there? If it seems like it was one person. There's more than one person.
No, two people. We have two people.
Ah.
His father and the other one was
Whose father? I didn't hear what you said. Whose father?
maybe Reb David, can you explain?
Ah, yeah. I heard. Do you think I should call him? He'll appreciate it? Or it's a waste of time?
No, he would appreciate it. I know that for a fact.
Wow. Unbelievable. Yishkoyach Reb Fischel, Yishkoyach Doilam, Imamish.
We should have good news, Rabbi.
Yeah, what's the good news? I need to hear good news.
No, I said we should.
Oh, we should hear good news. Yeah. So I'm very upset at a certain individual because I spoke to the father. I was holding it together for the most part. The father is very strong. He sounded strong. Everything is good. And then Yeshua sent me that picture. And I read the note. It's just, I don't know. I couldn't hold it together after that.
There's nothing wrong with it, Rabbi. He's right.
Only respect the crying.
Nah. Huh?
Even Ponoviches can cry.
Some people are babyier than others. No, what are you gonna do? I'm not as manly. Yeah. Ima yenoichi b'tzara. You gotta feel the other person's pain. Okay, whatever. Yeah.
They say he's back in the hospital.
Oy vavoy. With what? He doesn't have COVID.
I don't know. They say he's gonna come. He might come out Friday though.
Bezer Hashem. Joel Pollack, it's a long time no see. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome again. Amen.
The last time I spoke to you,
Yeah.
the name was wrong. The mother's name was wrong.
Okay, so send it, Nachamal. Send it again.
His name is.
Don't tell me the name. You have to send it. Otherwise, I'm not going to remember.
Send it to Yosef.
Okay. Joel Pollack, I don't know if you heard me before. I said hi. How you doing, Joel? He doesn't hear me. Joel in California. Shalom Aleichem. Doesn't hear. Okay.
By the way, wait, you said about the no. So I don't know if you saw it came out last week. They put out these little cards from Rabbi Varda Yosef. I think it's Pashas B'Shala. The target says, Bosa Noah, which actually comes out to be Corona.
Oh.
That's the reason why the Corona is because the people eat
Non-cooked meat. Interesting.
It's like a little card that they put out in there to show they gave out.
I wanted to make sure that you know that we use romaine and Lubavitch as well, not just horseradish.
But why didn't you tell me yesterday?
I said that we use horseradish. I didn't realize the detailed question. I hadn't watched the share yet. We use a mix.
Ah. So, how do you do the mix? Here's the shayla. How do you do the mix? You eat a full kazayas of each, or you do half and half?
Two leaves of romaine, and you put in good 2 spoons of grated horseradish, and you make a roast and you eat it.
Ah, so you're saying you're combining the shiurim. That's what I wanted to get to. That's what I'm trying to figure out. If you could combine. No, halachically 100% you could combine. The question is, are you doing romaine or you're doing horseradish? So I think it's good. I think it's probably a good eitzah. It's a good eitzah. It's a good eitzah. No, I said, of course a yaitza. The Mishnah says a yaitza. I can't argue on the Mishnah. What? Right, right, I know.
Balsamic vinegar, that kind of red wine vinegar,
Ma.
white wine vinegar, there's no chametz.
אני?
Rabbi, the whole vinegar stand
הוא לא נותן לך? מסיפתא, of course not. Hey, Akiva, great day. Great day, guys.